Now, observant and possibly even not very observant filmgoers may have noticed how often brand names crop up in the movies these days. Characters will use a certain well-known airline, which of course never crashes, drink a certain well-known cola, which of course never rots anybody's guts, smoke a certain well-known cigarette, which of course never gives anybody lung cancer, and so on. If you think the frequency with which these famous brand names crop up is merely a coincidence, you are clearly too innocent for this wicked world. Advertisers have known for a long time that if they can place their products in a big film, they've immediately homed in on an international audience. What is known as product placement has become a thriving business, as Tom Brooke now reports from New York.
America is, after all, the homeland of consumer capitalism, so moviegoers have become quite accustomed to seeing advertising on their way to the cinema. But increasingly, manufacturers are paying huge amounts to filmmakers to allow them to place their products in a film. Take Days of Thunder, for instance, which includes placements for Chevrolet Lumina cars, Exxon and Folgers coffee. All right, you might say, that's a film about racing cars where you'd realistically expect to see brand names. But this practice of product placement is present in most Hollywood films, in pictures like Gremlins 2, which included shots of a Hertz truck and the brand name Lego.
There have been surveys that show that in some movies now you can see up to or hear up to 50 product placements in the course of a given movie.
So they're more like advertisements in a way?
Well, they are in some way. It depends, of course, on whether it's just a can of Coke sitting on a shelf in the background, or is it a line of dialogue? That's what product placement people really like, is when a character in the movie uses a brand name as in part of a conversation that they're having with another character.
1/3 Calcan with liver.
You should take a couple of Tylenol.
In recent years, product placement has become a huge business, creating its own brand of professionals who broker deals between advertisers and film producers.
Here's a script called Bingo from TriStar, a story about a dog.
Warren Weideman is a product placement specialist. He pores over film scripts weeks before production begins, looking for advertising opportunities. He's found some films are better for product placement than others.
Comedies, action adventures are probably the two best. Period movies are not that obviously good for placements. War movies wouldn't have too many placements. If there's a lot of sex and violence and an R-rated script, most of our clients would rather not be in the film.
What about a horror film?
It depends on the scene. I mean, I think if a scene involving characters doing something like having breakfast, it's all right to have the placement. If someone gets their head chopped off during breakfast, the last thing you want is to have, placement in that scene.
As you can imagine, not everyone welcomes this growing practice of product placement. Some critics charge it's unfair, that moviegoers are being misled, that instead of getting unadulterated entertainment at the cinema, people are being subjected to one long commercial.
It sometimes distracts from the story because they make the product very obvious.
Very sneaky, very sneaky. Just put it at the end and you just see it and you choose what you want to buy, but there's enough intrusion without that going on.
Moviegoers aren't alone. Many actors don't like product placement either, particularly when it becomes excessive.
I go around turning cans around when people's backs are turned because I'm embarrassed to be a part of that process. And I've been quite successful at it.
Some Hollywood films look like full-length advertisements nowadays, don't they?
Some of them do, yeah. I'm against it.
Back to the Future 2 is among those movies critics have singled out for excessive product placement. During the film, the brand names of at least a dozen corporate advertisers appear. Product placement specialists say it's important not to go overboard.
What I don't want to see happen when I'm in a movie theater, I don't want to hear someone next to me nudge the person next to them and say, I wonder how much Budweiser paid for this placement. If they say that, we haven't done our job. It's too blatant, it's too obvious.
More and more movie producers are relying on product placement as a source of revenue, with advertisers paying as much as $250,000 for a placement. Media critics are alarmed because they maintain commercial as opposed to artistic considerations are now dictating film content.
The influx of product placement has coincided with the growing number of happy ending stories, stories which will situate the product in a more friendly environment, consumer-friendly environment, one that won't upset people in such a way that the product may be somehow viewed as associated with something unpleasant.
So you think it undermines the independence of the creative process?
Oh, there's no question.
Product placement shows no signs of abating. Those in favor of the practice argue it helps defray costs of film production, that when it's done well, it adds realism to movies. And in a sense, there is some truth to that, because increasingly now what's on the big screen is resembling more and more the commercial glitter of the real world outside.
Yeah, but I still prefer Harrison Ford's attitude. I always knew he was one of the good guys.